Today I will tell you about the film Lolita. Professor Gumbert rides on his car along a country road. His car loops, Humbert's face in the blood, in the back seat a bloodied gun, and in his hands a hairpin for hair. This hairpin belongs to the girl whom he fell in love without memory, because of which his whole life went awry. The roots of this forbidden love must be sought in the youth of the professor. When he was 14 years old, Humbert fell in love with a girl, but she died, leaving an unhealed wound in his soul. Many years later, when Humbert came to New England, he found medicines for youthful suffering. The professor settled in the house of the widow of Charlotte Geiss for two reasons. The house where he was going to live was burned out, and Charlotte had a charming Lolita daughter, or just Lo. Seeing Lolita, Humbert was speechless. He was about to abandon Charlotte's offer to settle with her, but then he noticed a young girl under the jets of a watering machine. The half-forgotten youthful love moved again in his soul. Gumbert began to make notes in his notebook on Lolita and her mother. He wrote frankly, not concealing anything. Charlotte did not attract him very much. More often she annoyed him with her screams and skirmishes with her daughter. But little Lo was delighted with him. The girl felt this, and with all her might heeded the fiery feeling of Humbert. However, he did not suspect that for her is just a game. The professor watched Lolita brushes his teeth and rises in the middle of the night to enjoy the tasty. He looked after her passes in the yard, tried to spend it nearby an extra minute. At the same time, he did not notice that Charlotte sunk on him. He was informed about this by Lo when I asked to persuade my mother to take them to the lake. Charlotte, during this trip, she told Humbert that Lolita would soon leave for the summer camp, and from there she would move to the boarding house for girls. This news upset Gumbert, but Lolita left him pleasant departure memories. Noticing how he escapes her, the girl ran into his bedroom. She jumped on him and kissed passionately. As soon as Lo and her mother left, Humbert buried in clothes in the bedroom girls. There he was found by the maid of Charlotta. She handed the letter from the hostess. Charlotta asked in him Gumberta to leave the house because she desperately fell in love with him. Or he can stay if you are ready to answer her feelings. Humbert remained. Soon they got married, and Charlotte. Humbert became an exemplary husband, but despite the stamp in the passport and the ring on a finger, he avoided intimacy with Charlotte with all his might. For this purpose, he experimented with sleeping pills, but he managed to make his wife incompetent for as many as 4 hours. However, she still woke up when he lay down in bed and collected a marital duty and a penalty from above. Having stood on paying for marital debts, Humbert goes to the doctor to ask for a sleeping pill, which will dump the elephant for at least 7 hours. Returning home, the professor finds his wife in tears. She opened the box of his table where he kept his notes about Lolit and Charlotte and read them. She realized how much the vile creature put into her house. Charlotte does not want to see him anymore. She writes a letter to Lolita while Humbert is trying her calm. He leaves for a couple of minutes to pour tape to both, and then the phone calls. Unfamiliar. The voice tells Humbert that his wife had died. Humbert does not believe. He goes to Charlotte, but that on there is no place. She ran out of the house to throw letters into the mailbox, and in the middle of the street she was shot down by a car. The driver did not have time to react when Charlotte suddenly jumped to the roadway. Humbert is amazed. He takes the letters of Charlotte and burns them in the fireplace. Then he goes to the camp to pick up Lolita. On the way, he orders a room for 2 in a hotel. Lolita, he says that her mother was sick. When Humbert brings Lo to the hotel, the girl meets the famous author of plays Claire Quilty. This elderly man shows an unhealthy interest in the cheerful Lolita. Humbert reports that the number with 2 beds is busy, and he will have to spend the night with Lolita on the same bed. The professor does not mind. He is with Lolita. They have dinner, then return to the room, and Humbert leaves the girl alone so that she put herself in order before bedtime. He himself goes to the terrace, where Quilty speaks with him. He pretty much gained and makes dirty hints about the relationship of Humbert and Luo. Somehow he felt how the professor wants to do with the girl. Is she my daughter, you say? When Humbert returns to the room, Lolita is already sleeping. In the morning, Lo takes the initiative into his own hands. The girl makes it clear that this is not the first time for her. Speak, Losh. Humbert, and therefore she quickly forgave him that he had hidden the death of Charlotte from her. Humbert takes Lolita from his hometown. They travel around the country, stop in roadside motels, and carelessly spend time. Lolita behaves like a typical child. Humbert uses a chance that falls far, not everyone. However, such an idyll comes to an end. Humbert decides to attach Lo to school, and at first everything goes well, but then it seems to him that the girl hides something from him. She asks for more money for pocket expenses, and manipulations convinces him to allow her to play in the school play. wrote the same Kilty play, which a couple met in a hotel. Humbert reports that Lolita missed several classes. He asks her about it, and the girl comes up with a convincing lie, which is confirmed by her school friend. Humbert believes that Lolita wants to escape from him. To do this, she accumulates pocket money. They quarrel and Luo runs away. I earned money for myself, okay? The professor has been looking for it for a long time in pouring rain, and finally finds in a cafe. The girl talks to someone on the phone. He takes her home, and Lolita says he wants to leave. Only this time, she will choose the route herself. They again go on a trip around the country. Along the way, Humbert notices that someone is following them. Moreover, the stranger is not particularly hidden. At the gas station, he sees Lolita talking to some man, but when he asking her about this, the girl replies that the stranger simply asked for the road. They stop in another motel, and Humbert goes behind the fruit. Returning, he understands that Lolita was gone somewhere. He loses reason from jealousy and tries to find out from her who she is so passionate about, but the baby Lo is just laughing in response. She understands that the professor is completely in her power. After some time, Lolita gets sick. It has to be taken to the hospital. Humbert is sent home. The next day, he was informed that his daughter became easier, and her uncle took her. Humbert is beside himself with anger. He resorts to the hospital and beats the doctor, trying to find out who they gave his girl. However, noticing the police, he calms down and leaves. But he just does not want to give up. He goes throughout the hotel where they were Xies, looking for entries in the books of visitors and notes one person with a special handwriting, which signed by different names. Humbert understands that it was he who took Lolita. Finally, he understands that Lolita left his life irrevocably. Humbert returns to the old job, and after 3 years, he receives a letter from her. Lo says that she got married and expects a child. She asks her dad to send he and her husband are several $100s so that they can pay at least a little with debts. At the end, she is signed by the name of her husband. Humbert decides to go to Lolita. He exercises in shooting from his pistol. The professor intends to deal with the person who is taken away by his girl. Lolita, I settled on the outskirts in the poor area. The door was opened by an adult girl with rounded belly. However, Humbert saw in her the Lolita that he fell in love several years ago. He is still going crazy about her. The girl invites the former lover to the house. She says that her husband believes that Humbert her father. She also says that she always loved only Coilty. True, he kicked her out when Lolita did not want to act in his films for adults with the participation of minors. Gumbert gives her $4,000 and says that they are in any case. She will remain with her, but he should know if he has the chances that baby Log returned to him. Lolita replies that there are no chances you are not normal. When she talked about Coilty, she accidentally mentioned where he lives, saying goodbye. Humbert leaves. Leaving her house, he for a moment sees the former Lolita and a pregnant girl. Humbert finds the house of Quilty, goes up and meets the owner in one robe. Quilty barely thinks. He is pumped up with drugs. Humbert leads him to his senses, threatening a gun. He wants Coilty to realize what they are going to kill him for. When clarity thinking to him returned, he tried to take the gun from Gumbert, but it did not work. Then Quilty tried to run, but the professor managed to shoot him several times. Quilty climbed in his bed, clenching with fear. In this bed, he was killed by Humbert. All bloodied, he left in his car. On the way, he was stopped by the police, but Humbert, all bloodied, he left in his car. On the way, he was stopped by the police. However, Humbert, it seemed, does not notice anyone around. All his thoughts are addressed to Lolita. Humberte was planted in prison, where he died of a heart attack. Lolita dies a few weeks later in time of childbirth. This is all for today. Subscribe and like if you want more such videos.